One of the most frustrating things, and the reason for our training today, is not getting that second meeting. I've been in sales a long time. I started my sales career way back in, when I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old. I started selling vacuum cleaners door to door. And so that's transactional sales. Generally, we were making sales that same day. And it was really hard to try to get that second meeting. Hey, you have to wait until I can talk with my spouse and then we'll decide or something. But you need that second meeting. But the sales cycle was very short. In government contracting, the sales cycle is very long, 6 to 24 months is what we like to say. And so those second meetings help you build those relationships and understand the customer. If you're not getting a second meeting, first off, that's really frustrating, right? But second off, it's a really good sign that you're probably not getting traction with that customer, and you might not win an opportunity you propose on if you couldn't even get a second meeting. But it's a skill. It takes time. I transitioned from selling vacuum cleaners and getting second meetings there to transitioning all the way up to doing billion-dollar sales with other large prime contractors and getting in and having conversation at the very highest levels about what an agency was trying to do. But that second meeting is just a fundamental skill within sales that you can practice over and over. And as you practice it, you're going to sit there and really get good at that skill. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to get the second meeting. I'm going to break up today's training into 3 sections I want to talk about. First thing I want to share with you is just why I think you aren't getting second meetings, right? And this is from experience. I've had situations like this where I'm not getting a second meeting. I'm like, let me figure out why I'm not getting it. But more importantly, over the last 7, 8 years, I've trained thousands of small businesses, and I've had a chance to see different things people do and go, that's why you're not getting a second meeting. And so I'll talk about the reasons why. First, we sit there and diagnose why we're not getting meetings. Then we'll go into the prescription, which are the next 2 sections. I want to give you steps you can take when you're in that first meeting that will lead to the second meeting, right? That'll increase your chances of getting a second meeting. And then the third thing I'm going to end up with is I want to talk to you about steps you can take after the first meeting. You've had a successful meeting. You didn't get the second meeting scheduled in that first meeting or even committed to. Well, what can you, what can you do afterwards? So we're going to talk about that. If that's what you want to hear today, put second meeting in the chat. If you want to start having more second meetings with the people you reach out to and have those first meetings with, put second meeting in the chat. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce and co-founder of GovCon in a Box. I spent 20 years as a small business owner. After I got out of the Army back in 1998, I started a government contracting business, did one for 10 years, basically another for 10 years. And in 2018, I started teaching. After I sold my last company, I started teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. This is why I do this training, is because I want you to have repeatable, predictable results. For example, if you have a first meeting, I want you to be able to predict that you're going to have that second meeting. I want you to be able to have that repeatable set of meetings that lead to you strengthening your position on an opportunity trying to pursue. So it's super exciting for me to be here and help you get those meetings. And when you start getting them, I want to hear about them. Okay, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to Government Contracting Success newsletter. Come join 21,000, I think, other people, and track on a lot of good, important information I put out related to federal sales in particular, right? So I teach only in the federal market and government contracting generally, but specifically sales. How do you start winning? What do you do to get in and build relationships, et cetera? And so when you go to the Government Contracting Success newsletter, subscribe, you'll hear about new issues we release. I put out content all the time on my LinkedIn profile. Make sure you're hitting that bell so you're notified of the new content I put out. And I've got a ton of good content that's coming out, not just tips from me, but tips from the government on how you can learn about them. The last thing, which I just realized I forgot to do, is make sure you sign up for tomorrow's training, which for the life of me, I can't remember. So maybe somebody's going to be kind enough to put it into the chat. One of the newsletter articles I just did over the weekend had the next 15 live trainings in there. So hopefully you're already tracking on what it is, but somebody will tell you what it is. Make sure you click on that and register. Let me grab one thing I'm going to share with you here in a second. One last thing before we get started, I just want to congratulate the companies that are in the 100 club. These are companies that have reached a score of 100 out of 100 for federal visibility score. This is the score I defined on how visible are you to federal buyers in the tools that they're looking at. So go to govconinabox.com, put in your UEI or your company name, and go see what your score is. When you see your score, click on it, and you'll be able to see the tips I give you specifically to fix your profile to get in the 100 club and be visible to federal buyers. All that is free. We put it out there for you. The data is coming from the government. We're just making it much better to see. So go to govconinabox.com. Congratulations to the Hallmark Healthcare Staffing. They just joined the 100 Club yesterday, so I'm pretty happy for them. What's wrong with your GovCon capability statement? Thanks, David. That's a really important training I'm doing tomorrow because I want to make sure you go into 2025 with your capability statement rocking. All right, so let's talk about why you're not getting in and getting those second meetings that you want. And I don't have them in any particular order except for what I wrote down when there. So when you look at my whiteboard behind me, this is where I do all my brainstorming. I teach you right from the whiteboard to the PowerPoint, right? And so the first thing I'm putting here is you're just not giving them a reason. This is really important. If I'm going to, and seriously, when you think about professional sales, it is like dating, right? It's you're building a relationship. You're starting with a hi. Hey, can we have a meeting? In the bar, it might be, can I sit down and we chat for a while, and talk. And actually, if you're in the bar and you're doing that, you want that second meeting. Can we go to dinner or something? And in government contracting sales or just sales in general, it's the same thing. We don't know each other and we're trying to get to know each other. We're starting to build that know, like, and trust that is required for successful sales. Somebody needs to begin to know of you, right? And then they need to begin to trust you through what you're saying and what you're getting back from them. So when you go into a first meeting and you're not giving them a reason for a second meeting, then why should they give you a second meeting, right? And I'm going to be a little brutally honest here, but don't worry about it. We can fix it. These are all just skill things that we can develop. There is no art or tricks or secrets to this stuff. This is skills. Skills are about learning how to do something and then practicing it over and over until you get good at it. So the second one I have here is you were boring. And literally I'm saying this because I've been with people and I've watched, I'm like, oh my God, you're boring the other person. You're not giving them any reason to do something. The people who are boring, you're not boring because you're a boring person. You're boring because you haven't taken the time to learn how to be a little bit more energetic in the meeting, right? A little bit more engaged. What I would encourage you to do is go to Toastmasters. Toastmaster International, you go in there, you can practice your communication skills with people. You get feedback from a circle of love of people who will give you feedback just because they want to help you get better at speaking. That's what I mean by boring, right? Is you're just, they can't even capture your information because you just are not expressive enough, if you will. So go find somebody to talk about that. By the way, on these particular things, take somebody into a meeting with you. I do this sometimes with our customers and I give them feedback afterwards. I'm like, whoa, you talk too much. You're boring. You were spot on, right? Sometimes they're just nailing it. And I want to make sure I'm telling them, hey, reinforce the good stuff. All right, third thing, you didn't bring a with them. What's in it for me, for the customer, for the person you're meeting? Sometimes people call this a value prop, right? With them's been around for hundreds of years. It's always that way. When two people meet, there's this kind of with them. What's in it for me? Why should I come into this meeting? Obviously, sometimes we help, right? But like I do these trainings all the time. One of the things that's in it for me is it is incredibly rewarding when I hear somebody go, oh, I've been watching your stuff for years. I've never talked to you, but I just want to tell you how helpful it's been to us. Well, that's very, very good for my soul, right? And I like that. And that's one of the things that's in it for me for something like this, like the trainings. But value proposition, right? You need to help them see, if I talk to you more, that second meeting, if I talk to you more, how's that going to help me? How's that going to help my program office or my agency, right? And they're not trying to get sold right there, but there needs to be something where they're like, oh, I see where you're going with this. It might take time for us to take the trip, but they need to be able to see the answer to with them. What's in it for me? All right, the fourth one. You share too much information. Sometimes we call this just information vomit. Sometimes I literally do it in the training, right? I give so much information, but you need to hear it. Too much information is when I go in there and I'm doing more talking than I am listening. Now, this is a one-to-many session, right? So it's my job to talk. But when you go into a first meeting or any meeting, frankly, with a potential customer, you want to listen twice as much as you talk. There's that whole rule, you got one mouth and two ears, use them proportionately. And so when I talk about you're sharing too much information, you're talking about you and your company and your solution too much. And what you really need to be doing is discovery, especially in the first meeting. You don't want to be a detective and act like they're guilty and you're asking questions, but you do want to be curious. You want to have a conversation with them where you're exploring their challenges, their goals. You want to explore their agency, not you. You can talk about you later. You can talk about you in the third meeting. Okay, the fifth one. This is just a brief one, but you cared too much, or you thought they would care about your tags. And we all make this mistake, and it's like a mission of mine to get us to stop making this mistake. But nobody cares at all that your business is a veteran-owned small business. They don't care that your business is a woman-owned small business. What they care about is, can you help them solve their challenges or achieve their goals? Can you help them accomplish their mission? They don't care if you're a minority or if you're an 8A firm or a hub zone, right? A service disabled veteran owned or a Native American Indian owned. They don't care about any of that, right? That's the SBA selling us these tags are vital. What people care about when they're meeting with you is, do you care about them enough to talk about their challenges and their goals and to listen and begin to help them understand how they might overcome them? They don't care about the tags. So go ahead and leave those out. You put it on your capability statement. So when you give it to them, they go, oh, you're an 8A. It's totally cool to tell them. Just don't think that they care that much about it, especially in the early meetings. And the last one is just unprofessional. This one's a big deal. It's because it's so easy to fix. But we go in there like to a meeting, we're late, and there's no excuse for being later than 15 minutes early to a meeting that is in person. You need to be like at their desk. You need to be at the building, at the security gate, and wait for them. Like they have to be the one who's showing up, a little late, and they're coming to you or something. And that's totally cool. Grab a book or something to do and read. And if it's a virtual meeting, you need to be 5 or 10 minutes early. One of my customers' friends out there says 5 minutes is late, right? 5 minutes early to a virtual meeting is late. And that's that makes total sense, because especially if you're trying to sell in that first meeting, right? If it's the start of a long relationship, don't start it off by being late. Dress properly. You don't have to wear a 3-piece suit. Sometimes I throw a jacket on, but I always wear a collared shirt. If I don't, my sister Cecilia's on here, I think today, and she'll yell at me, stop doing that. It's like, that's for off time. But, if you're going to meet with the government, put on a collared shirt. Match what they're wearing. If you're meeting with friends or something, a network, that's okay to dress down a little bit. But match, most importantly, it's not about a suit or anything like that and whatever the equivalent is for women. It's about matching kind of the person you're going to meet with. Don't make them feel like you're underdressed. And the last one is unprepared. And I've seen this way too many times, and it's so easy to get past. You don't read their website before you go in, right? You don't look at their strategic documents or whatever and get an understanding of their mission and what they do. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but 30 minutes is a really good amount of time to understand somebody before you go in. When you do that, that is a good start to a long-term relationship. And if you're looking at a meeting with somebody who potentially is going to lead to 100,000 or $1 million or $10 million in revenue eventually, then that early investment is important. The one thing about preparation, though, is never do a lot of research on somebody until you got a meeting. Otherwise, you'll research all these people who you're never going to meet. All right, so that's some of the reasons on why we're not getting meetings. Let's talk about steps you can take when you're in that first meeting that'll enable you to get a second meeting. And this one's really important for me, is that as you go forward, there's something called the call plan. I have many, many other trainings you can watch. They're free replays. But call plans are basically like a meeting agenda when you're going in, except for it's a meeting agenda mostly for you. It's preparing you before you go to that first meeting, and it's guiding you in that first meeting to make sure the meeting goes where you want it to go. Very briefly, a call plan has certain components to it. The first component I have at the very top is, what's my objective? I have this meeting. What do I want out of this meeting? Do I want a second meeting? Am I looking for a strategic document? Do I want an introduction? What am I looking for? What's my objective? I am not looking for a sale. In federal government contracting, remember, it's a long life cycle. You're just incrementally moving the sale forward. And so a call plan at the top has an objective. Another thing it has there, second thing generally, is an icebreaker. And the whole point of an icebreaker is don't talk about the weather, golf, or kids or whatever. And I know that might be a little bit of a debatable point for some people, but that's just wasting time. Instead, research them, have an icebreaker. I met with a senior leader in the Air Force, and when I did my icebreaker with her, I was like, oh, I had watched you on this other podcast episode talking, and it was really interesting how you made this point. And so right from the beginning, I'm establishing a relationship with her. I'm breaking the ice, but I'm keeping it about what we were going to talk about. We're still friendly. We're still doing the same as you would with golf, except for it's related to the topic we're going to talk about. And the other main portion, I'm going to come back in a second to purpose, which is something on there. But the other main one is you have questions. I write down 10 questions usually that I want to ask in that meeting. I don't ask it like a detective. I use that as a guide to conversation. I was looking at this document. I noticed it said this thing. What are some of the biggest challenges you have with that? Something like that. If I write the question down, I understand where to go. I have a lot of training on how you can write sales questions. And so it's really important for you to go look at that. You can just search for spin. Okay, so the second main bullet here is where I'm really diving into the main thing you can do inside of a first meeting to get a second meeting. When I have a purpose on my call plan, it's different than the objective. The objective is what I want to accomplish, what I'm hoping the measurement of success is in this meeting. When I look at the purpose statement, though, this is what I want to share with the other person. I say, hey, Jane, can I just share with you my purpose for this meeting, see if it aligns with you? We can adjust it if we need to, and then we move forward. Always they say, yeah, sounds good. And people love it. They're like, okay, great. Let's settle down what this 30-minute meeting is like or for, right? Or what's an hour meeting for. And so then I share the purpose, right? I think the purpose of this meeting is this, this, and this. Sometimes it might be as simple as, especially for a first meeting, I'd like to get to know your agency a little better. I'd like to share a little bit about my company. And if it makes sense, what I'd like to do is schedule a follow-up call so I can go do some research off what you tell me, and then I can come back and we could talk some more. Would that be okay? Right? That is a sales tactic. I told you at the beginning that sales is a skill and tactics are just things you do in a skill. You can think of it like a process, and inside of a process, you have procedures. Inside of sales, it's kind of that same thing. And so if I make a point at the very beginning of the meeting and say, Jane, I would like to have a second meeting with you. And that's kind of the purpose of this meeting, is for us to get introduced to each other, see if it makes sense to you and me to have a second meeting. I'm not looking to have a kind of a one and done conversation. I'm hoping to build a relationship with you and with your agency. Is that okay? Right? And a sales tactic at the end is always say, is that okay? No one's going to say, no, it's not okay. Right? It doesn't mean you're actually going to get your second meeting. What it means is that you're going to massively increase the chances of getting your meeting. Okay, put second meeting into the chat if you get what I'm talking about. Is in the purpose statement, you ask for the second meeting. Just put that in the chat. I want to know that that's driving home. While you do that, I'll talk about how else you can do this. Inside of the first meeting, one of the ways that you can get a second meeting out of this is to really help them like you and trust you. And one of the ways they can like you is to reference their agency documents. So if I'm going to meet with Jane and she's at the Navy in the Information Warfare Command or something, I might look at a strategic document that they have. And inside of there, I know I'm meeting Jane, and it's she's in the IT world, but hers is data. I will look at the data side and I'll say, hey, I was looking at a strategic goal of NavWar or the Navy, and they were talking about this on data. And then I'll ask a question about it. What I'm doing, though, is referencing that document. And in her head, she's like, thank you. Somebody who did homework before they came, right? There's this great line that says, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. Nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And if you're coming back referencing their documents and you took the time to read their documents and the part that relates to Jane, she's going to love it. She's going to appreciate the fact that you cared enough to do that research. And spinning off of reading that document, it enables you to speak their language. So if you look at, in the IT world, there's this phrase, IT modernization, and there's a similar one called IT transformation. And there's no right or wrong, but every office or agency does something different with some of their terms. And so if I took the time to read Jane's agency document, then I can go, oh, I want to make sure I'm saying IT modernization. Even though my website says IT transformation, And that's kind of how I call it. I'm transforming my language into her language, and I'm going to say IT modernization. You want to do that same thing. And you can do this even if you're doing facility cleaning of bathrooms or flooring. It doesn't have to be just this high professional services like IT. Really quickly, Stephen Covey's book, if you haven't seen it, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. In this book, he talks about habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is just something really important for you to remember. In that first meeting, seek first to understand what they're talking about. And then a little bit of being understood in there. Really, you being understood can wait for the second and third meeting. Get action items. This is very important. When you're in there and you're talking to Jane, ask for an action item. What would you advise me to do to be better prepared for a second meeting? It's sometimes like a subliminal way of saying, I want a second meeting. But you want her to say, well, you should go to our website and register. You should go to sam.gov. By the way, if anybody ever says you should go to sam.gov and register, don't tell them you already are. If somebody says you should register on our supplier portal, don't tell them you already are. Write it down and go, thanks. And that way you now have another reason to come back. Hey, Jane, you told me a company has been around 40 years to register in SAM, right? You told me to register in SAM. I went and checked it. We're all good to go. I made sure we're good to go in DSBS. And you said the supplier portal. That's great. Can we follow back up, right? So getting those action items gives you a reason to come back and talk to Jane. Hopefully you're getting stronger action items like, why don't you find an opportunity you might be interested in and come back? It's like, all right, I'm going to go do that. I'm calling you next week. And then the last one is make sure you're asking for the second meeting at the end. Give yourself 5 or 10 minutes at the end to say, Jane, I really liked what we've been talking about. I'd like to set up a follow-on meeting in 2 weeks. Could we do that? And just see where it goes. But, there's all sorts of tactics about how you ask. But really, if you've established a good relationship, just directly asking is totally fine. Hey, I just got a track of my time, but I really quickly wanted to announce 2 things that we have that are free and awesome that are out there. One is I do these daily lives all the time, and I constantly get asked, do you do this daily? And I've been doing it like 600 times in a row. So I have this ad event calendar that the team put together, and you can download that. And actually, I got the link. Hold on one second. I'm getting a little bit more prepared right here. Don't do it now because it takes a minute, but you can have it later or save it. So this way you can add my events to your calendar. And then when you're looking at your day-to-day calendar or schedule, you'll see my daily training right there. And the last one is make sure you're coming to that virtual networking event. We have that coming up on Monday, and I want to make sure you join us. There's well over 100 people who are scheduled to come, and it's a great way to meet other people live in there. All right, that's a really fast commercial. Let me get to what do you do afterwards? And I only got a few minutes, so I'm going to go through this pretty fast. But there's things you can do after you have your first meeting to try to get the second meeting, right? Sometimes you reach out to people and they're silent. And we call it sounding, like a whale. A whale comes up, is above the water and getting air and all that. And then they just dive really deep. In sales, that's normal. You just go, oh, they sounded. They'll pop back up a couple of days later, a couple of months later. It totally is fine. But if you're talking to them in that first meeting, the chances of them sounding too deep are reduced. But what I want you to do is immediately following the meeting, send them a thank you email for the meeting. I said 4 business hours, and I should have just meant exactly like 4 business hours, because what I'm saying is if you met with them in the afternoon, let's say 2 o'clock, don't send them an email until the next morning. So the next morning would be 4 business hours later, theoretically, and you're sending them a thank you. Hey, Jane, it was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, so just again, thank you. I'm going to type up the minutes and I'll send them over to you when I got them, probably tomorrow, right? And then you just send her the meeting minutes later that late of the day or the next morning. And what you're doing is marketing engagement and touches, right? Don't give her everything at once. Just use this as a way to follow up. Make sure those meeting minutes have the action items. Jane, here are the action items I think we had. As I get them done, I'm going to follow back up with you. And then the other one, number 3 I have here is send them information they'd value. And I think the statement makes sense, but remember they'd value. Not that you think is interesting. Think about the information you're going to send. You like it, but would they really value? Would it help them with what you understand about their challenges and goals? And then as you complete those action items, make sure you're following up. Jane, can we get on the phone 5-10 minutes talking about this action item we said to do. And then the last one is I had here is have an actual reason for following up. If there's no reason for you to get back, then don't just try to have the meeting. Sometimes we do this with contracting officers, most importantly. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. I know it was fast, so first off, go watch the replay on half speed and follow those tips. I really want to hear about you getting the second meeting. But use a call plan for meetings. You can search on my previous trainings. Just go to LinkedIn and search call plans. I think I'm the only one, but if you search call plans and then filter it by me, you'll see that information come up, and there's a template in there. And then in the call plan, make sure you're practicing that purpose statement. And then ask for the second meeting when you start delivering the purpose. Hey, the purpose of this meeting is this. I'd like to have a second meeting. That's really the purpose. So practice that. And the last thing I want you to do is follow up with value. When you have stuff that they would truly value, the government is just like you. They're trying to figure out how to get things done. If you can share information that would help them, they would really appreciate that. Hey, for the past couple of years, I've been helping people if they're interested with BD Accelerator Workshop. This is us helping you accelerate into the agency of your choice and into the relationships of your choice, because that tends to be where the challenge is. If your company's doing 2 million plus, right? Maybe a little less than 2 million, but if you've already got some traction, you're looking to accelerate to the next level, put workshop in the chat. In December, late December, is the last time I'm going to sign anybody up for the workshop for 2025. We are not going to do it in 2025. We've got other initiatives we're doing. And so in 2018 here, we'll sign up people for the beginning of the year to really accelerate. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you'd like to learn more about, I'm happy to share more information about it. Put workshop down and we'll guide you through the process. For all of us as we move forward, remember that government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.